A fugitive on the run or a man being persecuted by a vengeful and petty successor. The former Botswana President Ian Khama has been living in a self-imposed exile here in South Africa and says he fears for his safety should he go back home. His rift with his hand-picked successor, Mokgweetsi Masisi, continues. The current president of Botswana has said he's embarrassed by Khama, whom he's described as bitter because he was fired from the governing party rather than the claim he resigned. Khama now faces a raft of charges, including the unlawful possession of firearms and owning unregistered weapons. He's approached the Johannesburg High Court seeking a declaratory order to reject any extradition request should one be made. The United Nations Human Rights Commission has raised concerns about Botswana's perceived persecution of political opponents. Perhaps a particular blow for the former president was watching his sister Jacqueline's funeral on television because he was unable to return home. He joins us now on the line. Mr. President, thank you so much for your time this morning. Perhaps let's start with that low point. What was that like for you watching your sister's funeral from afar?
Well, of course, it was extremely emotional. It was heartbreaking that the unexpected death of our sister took place in our absence, and we were not able to go back home because of the threats on our lives by the Masisi regime. In fact, I would just like to point out to you that the only reason I am alive today is because I came to South Africa.
And of course, when you say we, I mean, that isn't just the royal we, you're referring to you and your brothers who are unable to go to the funeral.
Exactly. In fact, I just want to correct something that you said earlier, that this spat between the two of us started because he fired me from the ruling party. The correction is that I actually resigned from the ruling party because they have departed from the principles and values that were set up over many years and that I was proud to lead at one stage. And,
sure. I think perhaps you misunderstood. I merely said this is what is claimed. I didn't say that as a matter of fact. I said that's what is being claimed since you left. But let's start with this issue of the High Court in Johannesburg. They, of course, are saying, look, you can't be granted a preemptive order. Any extradition request would be viewed on its merits should it be made. Are you concerned that one will eventually be made?
Well, I have said before that if an extradition request came through, I would welcome it because it would then give me the opportunity to be able to state my case before an independent and foreign court. Because in the Botswana courts, in one or two, and I'm emphasizing one or two, not the entire judiciary, they had been captured by the state to do Masisi's bidding. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. In fact, just on Monday, there was supposed to be a ruling in a magistrate's court concerning this firearms case that you talked about, and the expectation was that we were going to do well in it. And then last minute, the magistrate does something unusual. He calls my lawyer and says that he's postponed the judgment, giving the judgment, because he's going on an official trip. And those kind of things is very unusual, but this is the kind of thing that is happening now in Botswana. So we're just having to wait once again for this case because it's been postponed since beginning of last year. It just keeps getting postponed because they want to ensure that they keep me out of the country and with the threat of arrest for as long as possible, leading up to the elections next year.
When we last spoke to you, you'd hired this UK-based law firm owned by Cherie Blair that cleared you of money laundering allegations. But these charges around weapons possession, where do those stem from?
We were not only cleared by Cherie Blair's law firm, we were also cleared by the High Court and the Court of Appeal in Botswana. So that case is dead, but it was one which was fabricated, just like these charges, because after that case fell flat on its back, they then dreamt up this latest one of the charges of being in possession of unlicensed firearms. But those unlicensed firearms that they claim I have got licenses for. And the people who were looking after those weapons, because back in Botswana as a former president, I have protection by the state through the intelligence service. They were the ones who were licensing my weapons. They were the ones looking after my weapons. And they are the ones who are also charging me for being in possession of unlicensed weapons. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You've also talked about attempts and threats on your life.
Exactly. You know, the United Nations Special Rapporteur even wrote to the government about that aspect to ask them to explain and to do an investigation, which they declined to do. And that, in my opinion, vindicates me because it shows they are guilty. I have called on anybody in the international community for the government to accept an independent investigation into what I'm claiming, and it has not been accepted. An independent investigation into these fabricated charges, they haven't taken it up.
Sure.
That's why 2 or 3 weeks ago, the United Nations Human Rights Council criticized the Botswana government for its human rights action, the record now, and its actions against me.
Can you describe what you mean by the attempts, though? Can you give us an example of what has happened that made you believe that your life was under threat?
It was through poisoning. It was through poisoning on the one hand, and then after we put that out publicly that this is what happened, they then decided to try and change the method. And another method they tried was they were going to have a break into the house where I stay and make it look like it was a robbery, a house break-in, a house incursion, and that in the process I would have been killed by the so-called robbers, and then there would have been a manhunt and everything, and no one would have been found. So that was another attempt that they intended doing. Another one was that when they arrested me, they were going to say that I resisted arrest, and therefore in the process of me trying to grab a weapon from one of the arresting officers, a gun went off and I was shot and killed. The last one was that during an arrest, they would have me in detention, and then an inmate was going to be given a sharp instrument to stab me and make it just look like one of those things that sometimes happens in prison.
What happened between you and Masisi? He was your guy, wasn't he?
You know, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's something that people have asked me so many times. I've asked myself so many times that I did not see this satanic culture or character in a man who was my vice president, who I appointed. Indeed, like I've said, there was once a cabinet revolt, if I can call it that, where a number of my ministers came to me to say, get rid of this man, he is bad news. He's irresponsible, he's immature, and he's very divisive. And I ignored them at the time. And I regret it today that I made a very foolish mistake in appointing him. And then he then went on to become president, and the country suffering as a result.
Beyond, I suppose, differences between yourselves as individuals, let's talk about institutionally. I mean, Botswana has long been a beacon of democracy and stability on the continent. Do the abuses you allege go beyond just you, I suppose? What is the state of media freedom now? What is the ability of opposition parties and critics to voice their opinions?
Well, let me give you the latest example. Just to give an example, do you know that today in Botswana, a so-called democracy, no one can register a political party? Can you believe that? Last year in February, they passed an amended bill of the Registry of Societies Act, and they removed the provision whereby people could register a political party. Why? Because we're going towards an election. I mean, you tell me. I have come up with a dossier, which I'm about to release in the next few days, a dossier which gives an account, because it's not just about me, as you said. It's about what's going on in the country, which is going to give an account of all the abuse of office and corruption that has taken place under Masisi in the last 5 years. So there's a lot that's going on in that country. And like you said, we were once the pride, and we went around very proud of our reputation as being in the forefront of being a democracy, adhering to the rule of law and human rights. And that has all now been swept under the carpet.
Our conversation reminds me of something Archbishop Desmond Tutu once mentioned, the idea of when presidents leave office, retaining, I suppose, some of the honors that they have become used to. And part of what we have seen on the continent is the phenomenon of leaders who cling on to power for long periods because they fear, I don't know, the indignity of arrests or persecutions after they're gone. In some sense, you must shake your head at the irony.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, but when you talk about entrenching incumbency on the continent, it's something, it's not, I don't think, because some fear that they're going to be arrested when they've gone because they've done something wrong. It's purely motivated by self-interest. These people have turned, in some cases on the continent, they turned the presidency into a self-serving institution, and they've become so used to how much they've benefited during that process that they don't want to let go. And you've seen constitutions being changed to extend the period of office that they can serve. You've even seen the term of office, you know, in some cases from 4 years, it's been increased to 5 years, and then 6 years, and then 7 years, just so that they can stay on longer and longer. And that's why we have in the continent quite a few of these tired, not effective old men still running their countries.
Is there no way to broker a peace? Could regional leaders, nudge, nudge, Pretoria, not assist?
You know, I don't know how to answer that one because, you know, when I was in office, and I saw what was happening in Zimbabwe under Mugabe. The region had protocols in place to address those kind of situations. There was for SADC a pathway that had been agreed to, that we wanted the region, the direction we wanted the region to go for the benefit of its citizens. But then lo and behold, we saw the kind of persecution and oppression going on under Mugabe in Zimbabwe, and nobody was saying anything about it. And I said, but what was the War of Liberation about? It was to give people the opportunities, to give them their freedoms, not to replace one oppressor with another one. And quite honestly, there had been some attempts by some leaders as individuals in this region to address the situation, but they are constantly being rejected.
Ever the politician there in that answer. We'll leave it there. Former Botswana President Ian Khama there on the line. What do you make of it? What do you make of his assertions, his allegations, and the responses to them?
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.